I think that when we started to work on the idea and the story of the Pierre Arpels, we took inspiration from his personality. He's quite an interesting gentleman with a great history. He actually designed the watch originally for himself to wear, and of course he was a great traveler. He was actually the one that was going to India and to Iran at the time and Persia to source the stones and work with the customer for Van Cleef Arpels. And so the idea of a first complication came quite organically, naturally, to be a dual time zone, which is something about travel. And we like the idea to name it in a slightly poetic way, which is actually written on a dial, which says heure d'ici and heure d'ailleurs, which is the time here and the time there. Already to give an idea of travel, which is not very much technical, but more about the idea of imagination as well as physical travel. When we developed the concept of a dual time zone, basically the first idea that we had was to do it in the most simple and sober way. I think that most dual time zone, even great pieces, they have multiple dials, hands, a lot of indication. Here we wanted to do something that was as pure as possible. And so we worked with the team of the Van Cleef & Arpels workshop and partner again with our friend Jean-Marc Wiederrecht to say, okay, how can we really work on the indication that will be as sober as possible? And already we wanted to have the hours indicated not by hands but by jumping hours, and then to see how we could really optimize the movement so that the dial will be very pure. And actually you have on the dial only the representation of the two jumping hours, so one for the main hour and one for the secondary time zone, and only one hand actually for the minutes, which is a retrograde indication of the minutes, and that keeps the whole purity of the dial, which is very much one of the features of that collection, which is about understated elegance. Of course, to do so, as you know, was not so easy technically. Jean-Marc had to actually design his first movement. This is the first movement that he creates from scratch and that we created together. So instead of using a basis movement and then a module, here to make sure that we could preserve the thinness, to limit really the thickness of the movement, he had to build the movement from the beginning to integrate, of course, the functionality. He designed a whole system which is based on a sector that actually enables to have both hours, jumping hours, to jump exactly at the same time, simultaneously, which is of course the time when the hand from the retrograde comes back to original position. So we have three movements that happens exactly at the same time, which is of course managed by the movement is created. Very constant power provided by an automatic movement with an integrated micro rotor that he designed. So you cannot be more simple than that in appearance, and obviously the work behind and the watchmaking, which is hidden, is quite something, quite spectacular. And this is very much the tradition that we feel is relevant for Pierre Arpels, and actually even more widely for Van Cleef & Arpels. I think we do that for the jewelry as well. If you think of the mystery setting, the idea is that it's probably the most technical jewelry in the world, but you see the technique only when you look at the back of the piece. We believe that from the front you should only see a beautiful story. And so this is what we tried to transfer this year with that watch into our masculine watchmaking world.